Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this session in our Edgware United Synagogue Adult Education Cantorial Programme. It is presented in association with the European Cantors Association, and once again is fronted by one of the ECA's regular contributors, David Prager, who is a leading member of that organisation. The topic tonight is the outstanding cantorial talent of Rev Philip Copperman. I'm particularly looking forward to this presentation, since it's currently one of the few leading cantors of the past where there are no recordings on YouTube or similar video sharing websites. For those who haven't heard my introduction to our speaker tonight, David R. Prager was born in Manchester. He has studied the music and biographies of the cantors of the 20th and 21st centuries. He's in demand as an accompanist at cantorial concerts due to his ability to play all the most famous cantorial compositions in a key appropriate to the voice of the soloist. A chemist by profession, he pursued a prestigious senior management career and pension fund chairmanship in multinational corporations. He lives with his wife Jill in Surbiton. At the end of the presentation, you will have an opportunity to comment and ask questions.
Thank you very much, Spencer. So let us kick off straight away with the outstanding cantorial talent of Reverend Philip Copperman. And please note, everybody, one L in Philip. He didn't like it if you spelt his name with two. So who was he? What is his biography? What are the personal connections to bring his rare talent to light? Well, who was Cantor Philip Copperman? Pinchas. He was born in the Seder of Pinchas, so he was called Pinchas. His father was Avram Simcha Copperman, and the family had come from Leeds to Dublin before he was born. His oldest brother, Gershon, was born in 1926, named after the grandfather Gershon, whose photo of his grave you can see online in the Hilltop Cemetery records of Leeds. And if you look in the 1921 census for Leeds, you can see that the family came from Plock near Lodz in Poland. And if one reads the records about the Copperman family, you will see that Gershon Copperman, the senior Gershon Copperman, because junior Gershon Copperman was the eldest brother of Philip's siblings. Gershon Copperman on the census and in the newspaper articles about him tell you that he worked in the tailoring trade, but one of the newspaper articles says that he was a rabbi. And so the distinguished Copperman family already had rabbinic components to it before the family was in Dublin. And a number of people here tonight will know other members of the Copperman family. And in fact, our technical presenter tonight in Edgware, his wife was at Michlala and knows Chazan Copperman's brother, who was the principal, Yehuda, who was the principal of Michlala. Okie dokie. So what's his biography? So he's born in Dublin in 1931 in the Seder of Pinchas, hence his name. And as a child, he was extraordinarily talented musically. Not only did he have a beautiful voice, but his sight reading and music notation skills were in demand. I can remember visiting him in Netanya one time, and Blossom and his wife Blossom told me that people would come round to the house to get their Irish ballads notated by the young Philip, who was so fluent. And I, as a choir boy in 1960s Manchester, remember that in the days before photocopying, the choir was given 4 books. 1 book for the tenors, 1 book for the second tenors, 1 book for the baritones, 1 book for the basses, all written out by Chazan Copperman himself. And we used to share the music books, and we could see when he was helping us learn these pieces how facile was his super quick and accurate sight reading of the most awkward intervals, just like butter. So it was clear that we were dealing with a very talented musician. Personal connections to bring his rare recordings to light. The last point on this slide is there are very, very few, as Spencer said, very few recordings of Chazan Copperman. If you're very discerning and very searching and very persistent in your quest, you can find 3 tracks on the Jewish Holiday album of the Emanuel Fisher Singers, the Emanuel Fisher Choir, a record made by a subset of the London Jewish Male Choir in the mid-1960s. And he is the soloist, but not mentioned as such in Zulzer's Avinu Malkeinu, which we will hear soon. Also in Sisu v'Simchu v'Simchas Torah, and also in Kol Nidre. And we'll hear that as we leave the meeting. So if you seek further, you have to go to people who got married by him. And his colleague in Manchester was Rabbi Felix Carlebach, whose daughter got married during the era of Chazan Copperman's reign in that synagogue, and the wedding was recorded. So we're going to hear the Fabian Gonski Synagogue Choir from Manchester, which was a traveling choir, singing Matova with him as the soloist. And if you search even further for the pirated recordings of concerts where somebody smuggled in a tape recorder, I was lucky enough to receive a version of Pinchik's Ribono Shel Olam with then Daphne Lewis, who I welcome, Daphne Coleman tonight from Israel as the accompanist. He was very discerning that he always preferred Daphne to play the piano when he was concertizing because of her incredible professionalism. Right, let us move on, because that's all that you can find in recordings, more or less. He made one private record in London, also around 1960, and we're going to hear a few snatches of that as well. Elliot, can I ask you to move to the second slide? Okie dokie. So here's a picture which I'm very grateful to Nathan Goldman, today the Chazan in Stuttgart, because his grandfather, Chazan Katanka of Liverpool, Moshe Katanka, Morris Katanka, was his co-student at Jews College in 1950 and kept this photograph always. So you will hear later on that at the age of 19 in 1950, Chazan Copperman became the cantor of the great synagogue Duke's Place. And this is mentioned in all the concert programs. How is it possible to be the Chazan of the great synagogue Duke's Place 9 years after it was bombed and destroyed by enemy action? The answer is that the United Synagogue built a brick sort of hut which housed the great synagogue. Still during the war, it was reopened, and Chazan Copperman was appointed there in 1950. Actually, this photograph also masks a controversy. The Anglo-Jewish establishment was not comfortable with a young, unmarried 19-year-old as the cantor of the great synagogue Duke's Place, London. However, this was in the era when Major Edmund Rothschild was still the Gabbai, and he had powerful friends in the administration of this particular community. And the United Synagogue was persuaded to employ him as cantor to the United Synagogue, delegated to the great synagogue Duke's Place. So those who were offended by such a young single man being the cantor of the great synagogue had their concerns addressed. But a way was, as you hear, was found around it. So we mentioned that Avram Simcha Copperman came from Poland to Leeds to Dublin. He married Sarah Saperstein, and those of you from Anglo Jewry will know that his cousin was Rabbi Bernstein later on in northwest London, but from Dublin, because the mothers were sisters in the Saperstein family. I've mentioned his siblings already. Gershon, the oldest brother, was born just after the grandfather Gershon had died in Leeds. And you'll see a picture of the gravestone in Leeds before we have finished. So the siblings are listed there. he married in Leeds in the early 1950s, Blossom Fass, the daughter of Reverend Fass of Leeds. And in fact, he told me that in 1951, when he was about to leave the Great Synagogue, London, having been there for a year, he auditioned successfully to succeed the great Polish via Budapest Chazan Moshe Price at the Central Synagogue in Manchester, where Rabbi Dr. Louis Jacobs was the minister. And he was pressured by one of the senior wardens to marry his daughter. So he ran across the Pennines to Yorkshire, and he went to Leeds, where he was employed at the Beis HaMidrash HaGodel synagogue, and indeed he married there his beloved Blossom. And we send best wishes to Blossom in Netanya, who's recently had her birthday, I hear, according to Jeanette. So many happy returns. I think without embarrassing her, we can say that she's in her mid-90s. And Jill and I visited her last year in Netanya and had a wonderful conversation with her. So let's move on to the next slide. Jeanette, we've already introduced, and we'll let you say hello later on. So the early period, 1931 to 1950, the first 19 years, I'm grateful to an American cantor who recently did a presentation on YouTube, which you can all watch, of the fascinating story of Philip Modell, who is smiling to you from the page, left-hand side of that Adelaide Road Synagogue Choir, Dublin photograph. He was the choir master in Dublin from just before the war until the 1950s. And my guess is, looking at that photograph, that young Philip is about 2 to the right of Philip Modell. In white, in the kittel at the extreme right, you have the famous Chazan Freilich, Naphtali Freilich, whose brothers were Chazonim in the Hampstead Garden suburb and Stanmore. And their eldest brother, Rabbi David Freilich, told me, and he lived to about 100. I was once going into a Chazanos concert in northwest London with him, and he said that his brother Naphtali was the most talented of all of them. However, he died tragically young, in fact, before he was 40, I think. This picture seems to be from just before the war, around 1938-39. And within 10 years, the young Cantor Freilich had passed away. And for those discerning and knowing about Anglo-Jewish cantorial history, you can see in front of the Ark of Adelaide Road there, with the round glasses, maybe behind Philip Copperman in the back row, slightly to the left, the features of Reverend M.H. Taylor of Dollis Hill later on. And he was older than Philip Copperman, and Philip said to me that in that choir he had a beautiful tenor voice, and he remembered him all his life. And in fact, it was supposed to be the death of Chazan Freilich which motivated Reverend Taylor to pursue a career in the cantorate. So now, reading the slide, you've probably already read it. Musical talent apparent at an early age, era of great cantor Naphtali Freilich and choral composer Philip Modell. Philip Modell had escaped from Germany, from Nazi Germany, in the late 1930s to Dublin, and he married in Dublin. And he composed a number of pieces, and later on went to America, where he became a cantor in his own right. And he was also a brilliant musician, and he had a terrific effect as a mentor of the young Chazan Copperman. Isaac Copperman can tell us later on whether any of the other siblings are in the choir. I nurse the feeling that maybe back right somewhere is Gershon. But later on, when we unmute the participants, maybe we'll get chapter and verse on that. And if Rabbi Menachem Copperman of Israel from Bet Shemesh is online, this ark from Adelaide Road was, I believe, transported after Adelaide Road closed to Israel by his good offices. So if you look in the Jewish Chronicle Archive, you can see that on his appointments, it's mentioned that he studied music in Dublin. It also says in the Jewish Chronicle Archive, if you look at later appointments, that he had 18 months at Gateshead Yeshiva. So he was quite a Talmud Chochem as a Chazan, which stood him in terrific stead. And he was then at Jews College under Pinkasovich, and he had private lessons. You see, top right-hand corner, Shmuel Baruch Tauber, who had survived Auschwitz, gone back to Paris, and then was appointed in London after immediately having been liberated to Sweden. And our last session was on Chazan Tauber. And thanks to the Edgeware organization, there was such a clamor for more that a topic for this evening's presentation was sought, and Chazan Yehuda Marks of Manchester immediately said, the next presentation, if there is one, has to be on Chazan Copperman, because his unique combination of beautiful voice, being a Baal Nusach, and being a terrific communal figure means that in his eyes, this was the preeminent candidate to be the subject of this evening's proceedings. And judging by the international interest, that is definitely the case. Right, so here we go. We're going into Chazan Pinkasovich's class in 1950 in Jews College. And this is the era when Michael Rothstein is arriving at Jews College, Simon Hass is arriving in Jews College, Meir Lev Sr. is arriving in Jews College, and a number of other Chazan Katanka we've already mentioned. And so this class of 1950, towards the end of Shlomo Pinkasovich's life, produced a number of extraordinary talents. And I'm thinking that also the Chazan of the New London Synagogue, who's still alive and close to 90, who I had the very great pleasure to meet at one of Chazan Dabina's soirees recently, Chazan Rothschild, was also in that class. Right, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, we're gonna, if we can stop Dino Borgioli singing for a quick second. Elliot, can you wait for it to be introduced? Right, back a slide. There. So Dino Borgioli is mentioned in all the concert programs as being his opera Rebbe. Dino Borgioli, who was he? He was a famous Italian opera tenor who sang at Metropolitan Opera in New York. The reason that you may not have heard of him is because he had the misfortune to thrive in the era of Caruso and Gigli and Tito Skipper. So there wasn't space in the world for another famous name of that degree of fame. And he settled, and it's believed that maybe he was also of Jewish origin because he taught a few chazonim. And he settled in London and opened up a studio to teach voice to budding operatic singers. And I thought the first clip of sound that we should hear, so that you have an understanding of the tough drilling that he got in vocal technique. I remember him telling us in the choir that he used to have to sing very high notes and maintain them with one breath and getting softer under control and getting louder and getting softer and keeping that same note and getting louder again. And this was the regime of Dino Borgioli that he studied under. And we've got a very, very quick, short snatch of Dino Borgioli singing so that you can hear precisely what his Rebbe sounded like. And he's singing Mi par da dir ancora by Bizet from the Pearl Fishers, recorded in 1923. Okay, Elliot, please take it away and click on Dino Borgioli's soundtrack on the next slide from this one. Yeah. Right. I just saw a note there that Chazan Garb was his first teacher in Dublin. There are a few recordings of Chazan Garb online, beautiful. And there's a website now dedicated to Chazan Garb as well, and his attempts to get to America, but those failed attempts and returning to Dublin. Elliot, that was beautiful. I think that everybody can understand the academism and artistic merit of Dino Borgioli, whose teaching skills were famous at that time. Can we play La Donna Immobile, which was on that slide, with Chazan Copperman singing it in around 1960 in London? Yeah. Beautiful. And for the music, Mevinim in this group, that last note was a top B, and it was sang with beautiful effortlessness. Okie dokie. So we're moving on to the next slide. And following his early career in Leeds and then moving on into Southport and then moving on to Giffnock in Glasgow, and then moving on to the Western Synagogue in London, we arrive at his relationship with London Jewish male choir conductor Emanuel Fisher. In Glasgow, I think it started a relationship with Adrian Isaacs as the choir master when they started the Glasgow Jewish male choir. I see that Bernard Rubin is online, so he'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong there. An old Giffnock boy, or a young Giffnock boy, let's say. Let's hear. I remember him singing Zoltzers of Ina Malkain. If it came to the end of Yom Kippur, and there was still a quarter of an hour until the end of the fast, and he's getting towards the end of Ne'ilah, and everybody's thinking, how is he going to manage to pack out a quarter of an hour between where he's up to now and it not yet being ready for sounding the shofar? But they didn't know that he had Zoltzers of Ina Malkeinu up his sleeve. So here you go with Zoltzers of Ina Malkeinu from the Jewish Holiday album, recorded in the 1960s with the Emanuel Fisher Choir. So, Elliot, please take it away.
Those of you who are still in shul at the conclusion of Ne'ilah will have heard me sing Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Most shuls rush through this all-important prayer, but for me it sums up all my beliefs, so I stretch it out.
So that's simply beautiful. It reminded me as I was listening to it, the beautiful vowel sounds. I remember as a choir boy, him trying to tell us, don't make harsh vowel sounds. Ah is ah when you're singing. O is O when you're singing. And you would have heard it if you'd have been concentrating during that last clip that we played just now. Right, let's move on. I should be remiss if I didn't mention the travels to Israel for the 5th Zimriya in the mid-1960s, because I saw online the program of the 5th Zimriya, the choir festival in Israel, which is a very high quality choral festival with the best Jewish choirs in the world. And arguably the London Jewish Male Choir was the preeminent choir at the Zimriya, and Chazan Copperman was the preeminent soloist. In that era of the mid-1960s, I remember traveling with Blossom and Jeanette to his 1968 concert in the Royal Festival Hall, where he sang the same Bnei Chatoenu by Brun with the choir that he had sang at the Zimriya, and it was an absolute knockout. And if anybody online has got a recording of that, then everybody in the world will be grateful to you for coming forth with it, because so far I have not been able to put my hands upon this most dramatic piece of singing and this most emotional and brilliantly composed and brilliantly executed piece of Chazanot HaRegesh. But here you see 3 pictures in front of you with Chazan Copperman of some of the choir masters he worked with. On the left, you see Adrian Isaacs, who he knew in Scotland, Fabian Gonski, the wine merchant of Manchester, and he was the permanent choir master at Higher Crumpsall, where Mordechai Hirschman's brother, Solomon Hirschman, was the chazan. And he had a traveling mini choir that would go round to Simchas. If you had a wedding in South Manchester, Fabian Gonski's choir would come as long as you bought your wine for the event from Fabian Gonski. Emmanuel Fisher on the right was the conductor, not only of the London Jewish Male Choir, but also at the Western Synagogue, where Chazan Copperman was the incumbent between his stints at Giffnock and South Manchester. So we're talking the early 60s. Okie dokie. We've got a sound file with him and Fabian Gonski's traveling choir at Rabbi Karlebach's daughter's wedding in 1969, Matovu Lewandowski. So Elliot, if you could please play the clip which is underneath Chazan Copperman's beard there, that would be great. That's Fabian Gonski himself playing the harmonium. I just saw a comment from Yaakov Tauber. So good evening and welcome to Yaakov Tauber from Israel, the son of Chazan Tauber, who was one of the Rebbes for Nusach in 1950 in London of Chazan Copperman. It's great to be with you again. And it's also very true what you say on your chat line there, that it's very emotional to hear this piece sung in this way by this man. Elliot, can we please move on to the next slide, speaking about his later career? We haven't got a picture there, but if I would do this again, I would put a picture of Louis Shute, the choir master of the great synagogue Duke's Place, next to these three, because I think that at the age of 19 in the great synagogue London, alongside Louis Shute as the choir master, that will have been also a terrifically educational and formative experience, which he will have put to good use in his later career. 1972 to 1985, Southern Africa. He was in Claremont, Cape Town, and then a number of other synagogues in South Africa, and then to Zimbabwe, to the huge community that was then in Salisbury. And 1985 to 1990, he was in North America, whereupon he came back to Bonnie, Scotland, first of all to central Glasgow for a few months, and then as Colbo, minister, cantor, pastoral carer to the community of Newton Mearns, where he endeared himself, and so did his wife, to the community over a long period between 1990 and 2002. And in those years, his voice had suffered from troubles which had started already in Manchester with a polyp on his larynx and surgery. And so his expertise in Kriyat HaTorah that he could lane at the drop of a hat enabled his career to continue as minister and reader to these various congregations. In 2002, he retired to Netanya. All the Copperman family were fervent Zionists, following in the footsteps of their late father, who had wanted to be buried in Israel. And he passed away, sadly, in 2010, sadly missed by family, many friends, and admirers. And Alex is reminding me from Manchester that he also gave a good sermon. I remember, yes, you're right, Alex. I remember his sermon when he came back from Israel, having volunteered to go there at the time of the Six-Day War, and it was gripping to hear his oratory, and that he will be remembered for as well. And he's buried in Netanya, and I had the opportunity to visit that cemetery recently, and he's not far away from a number of other great UK cantors who also retired to Netanya. Chazan Hillman is buried there, and Chazan Feigenprim is also buried in the same cemetery. Right. For later career, I didn't originally have a sound clip, but we'll come back to that later. No, it's all right. Let's go to the program in London, the blue slide. Yeah. So this, I mentioned earlier, the 1968 concert at the Royal Festival Hall, which was one of the best Chazanut concerts one could imagine. The choir was in sparkling form. Simon Hass was in sparkling form. Philip Copperman was in sparkling form. And if you look closely at the program there, if your eyes are good, you'll see that item 6 is Habet Mishmaimur A by Bogchester. And I was in 1968, I was 15, and I'm now 71. And if I say to you that I still got that ringing in my ears, it would not be a lie. This is one of the most difficult pieces of cantorial art, made famous by Moshe Koussevitzky, and the drama and emotion is at the ultimate level you can have for Chazanut. And he delivered this piece together with Daphne in such a powerful way that it became absolutely unforgettable. And he also sang Umet Nechatuenu in a part of that concert with the choir. And that was also outstanding. So I can imagine why the Zimriah reporters from Israel said that he was an absolute knockout when he hit Israel with the London Jewish Male Choir in the mid-1960s. So Daphne, is there you see your picture in the middle of the page. Very nice to see you again, and we hope that you'll be able to chat to us when we come to the end of the slides. I guess that some people will have joined from half-time in the England international football match. So if there's anybody who's got to go back to the match again, I have no idea what the score is. If they would put it in the chat that they want to speak now, we'll let them. But otherwise, we will move on. Let's just have a quick inspection of the chat. I'll leave that to the Edgeware administrators to look after. Here are a few programs. When I was in Netanya one time, Blossom and Philip gave to me a tape of recordings. And this tape was a mixture of things, some opera, but also a remarkable Rom Vinissar. And you see at the top right-hand, and I'm grateful to Cantor Dubina, who gave me this program of a grand charity concert in London, Brent Bridge Hotel, 1964, where he opens the concert with the same piece, Rom Vinissar by Label of Waldman. If anybody wants a recording of that, I'm not going to play it tonight. He sings it unaccompanied, beautiful. And anybody is welcome to email me afterwards and ask for a copy of that. I haven't got a copy of him singing Avarachimim by Pinchik, but we're going to hear a piece of Pinchik from his Manchester concert, if we can locate it still this evening. 1967, you see that he's to give his skills to the Friends of the Manchester Kollel, and he was to appear in 1967 with Pesach Siegel, but Pesach had to withdraw because of illness, I think, in his wife's family. And the replacement was none other than Moshe Stern. And the two of them concertized together. Two cantors of completely different styles. And Chazan Copperman was very generous, and he gave most of the time to the young Cantor Stern to perform. And he sang on that occasion Pinchik's Rebbeinu Shalom. And if anybody listens to the Pinchik original record, you will notice that he makes a textual error. Sfartem lochem mimochras hashabos. He says, Sfartem lochem mimochras hashabos hashavias. And it's not in the text. Shavias comes in later part of the paragraph. And Chazan Copperman corrects it. Sfartem lochem mimochras hashabos hashabos, he says, in order to not introduce the incorrect words. So you can see the academism of the man in that way. All right, Jeffrey Wyndham has come onto the chat saying that he was part of his choir in Southport. Let us unmute you quickly, because I know you want to go back to the international football match. So, Jeffrey, ask to unmute. Tell us your quick recollections from Southport and maybe the score as well.
0-0 at the moment.
All right.
Hello, I'm Jeff. My dad was kosher butcher in Southport. We moved there in the 1950s when I was about 7 or 8. And then when Chazan Copperman came, he very quickly formed a choir. And me and my brother were part of it. That was pre-puberty, so I still had a high voice. And we had a mixed age range. He always insisted on us being on the bimmer with him. We were like his backing group. There was in the shul there was a choir balcony, but he never wanted us up there. He wanted us on the bimmer with him, and he taught us how to sing together as a choir, harmony and discipline, and the joys of repeating things over and over again. And he was such a lovely person to be around. And he would invite us round. I used to go around to his house. I wrote on there, and he'd play opera records. I wasn't a big opera fan, but I just enjoyed being with him. He was so passionate about his singing and so passionate about being a chazan, and that transmitted to everybody. So being on the bimmer with him was an absolute joy. That's all I can say, really.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeffrey. Did the match start promptly at 8 o'clock, and therefore you've got to go back to the second half now?
I will. Lovely to be with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for popping in.
Yeah, thanks for setting it up.
Bye.
Bye.
So, and then looking at the programs, you can see that he always included some opera. At the bottom of the page on the right-hand side, you can see a piece of Verdi and a piece of Meyerbeer. In fact, O Paradiso is on one of the tapes that he gave me. The same is the case for the Manchester concert of 1967, which you can see there. Can we go back to that, other program? 1970 Manchester, again, charity concert for the Colo. And in the right-hand side, I saw on the internet this order of service in Salisbury Hebrew congregation. So after he left South Africa and moved towards Zimbabwe, the last president of Rhodesia during the era of the premiership of Ian Smith was John Rathall, who was present at this service in 1977. And this is one of the rare occasions you see his degrees in music come out on the printed page, FLCM and LRAM. And he also had studied, and the Dubliners kept royal in the name of their Academy of Music, even after Irish independence. And so he was also an alumnus of the Dublin Academy. So we're going to do the three pieces of Chazanot Regesh, and so emotional cantorial art as opposed to this ordered choral art that you heard before with Zulz's thing. So the top one is Leber Waldman's Alle Rishonim. I remember the choir in Manchester, to be thanked by the community, they gave us a present, and he was in charge of choosing what present to be given to the choir boys. And he chose some Chazonis records from a Judaica shop in North Manchester. And the one that I ended up with was a Leber Waldman record. So he obviously was a fan of Leber Waldman. So here is Leber Waldman's Alle Rishonim. You, Elliot, to work the magic on the electron. Yes.
Al Rishonim, Al Wachronim, Al Rishonim, Al Wachronim, Dover Tov, Rekayom, Liyoelom, Liyoelom Vover. Emes Yemuna, Emes Yemuna, Emes Yemuna, Veloy Veloy Yavor, Emes V'yal Wachronim, Emes Al Rishonim, Emes V'yal Wachronim, Emes Al Rishonim, Emes V'yal Wachronim, Emes Dover Toir, V'kayom li'olam voed. Emes Emes Yamuna, Emes Yamuna.
Fantastic. I'm reading in the chat here from Daphne in Israel. Wonderful memories of the first chazan I ever accompanied. Well, you're going to get a pleasant surprise now because Meir Lev in Netanya gave me a recording of you playing Pinchik's Ribbonu Shel Olam for him at that concert with Moshe Stern in Manchester in the 1960s. So, Elliot, please could you play it? We've just got the first half because otherwise it would be too long. So that's a large excerpt of Pęczek Srebrenicy, and it's sung with such smoothness, and as Alex is quoting there on the chat, without shouting. He had a catchphrase about his bel canto training. He says, I sing bel canto, other people sing con belto. So he made time on the note, like a good footballer makes time on the ball. Somehow it was always enough time. And this mystical quality that he could convey makes a piece of Kabbalah like Ribbon Shel Sphira really beautiful to listen to. And he had that authenticity. Right, we've got one more piece of emotional cantorial Chazanut HaRegesh to listen to. And I think it's the first concert piece, more or less, that I ever heard him sing, which is Mordechai Yardeni's Eso Einai. So, Elliot, if you could find it, the third piece on that slide, let's have a go at Terry. Beautiful. Beautiful. And very nice to read this comment in the chat box from Mr. Luder, who is telling us that he's the longest serving member of the London Jewish Male Choir and he remembers him well. We've just got a couple more pieces to play and then we'll open it up for everybody to chip in. Let's have a quick listen to the Sheva Brochas from the Karlebach wedding in 1969. And then we'll let him play out with Kol Nidre, and then you can all speak. Goyach. This was terrific. And so sad that to remember the last time I visited him, he said, David, you know, when I was a boy in Dublin, I used to play 3-hour football matches, and now some days I can't even speak. So unfortunately, at the end of his life, he was smitten with illness. And we see here on the right a picture of his grave. In the middle, we see his parents' 2 graves on the Mount of Olives. And on the left, some of you may never have seen this before, the grave of Gershon Copperman in the now closed cemetery, in the Hilltop Cemetery. You're not allowed to access anymore because of the mining which had taken place in past years, and the fact that a number of graves had fallen in. It's dangerous to walk there. But bless them, the Leeds community have photographed every grave and put them online. So, and once a year they have a memorial service lower down the hill where you can remember those buried there. So you see grandfather Gershon buried in 1926 in Leeds. Last slide is the next one, and we play out of the presentation with the beautiful London cornetry humming, and this is orchestrated version. And this also appears on the mid-1960s record of the Emmanuel Fisher Choir. So Elliot, please take it away. Beautiful. Okay, now, so organizers in Edgware, please open the floor to all participants.
Right, if you can put it on to me now.
Yeah, let's start talking.
Right, well, that was magnificent. I'm sure it brought back floods of memories from family and friends. And if you'd like to raise your virtual hand, let's hear from the family and from friends. Who would like to kick off? Choose a turn
Daphne
that might be
Coleman,
appropriate
Daphne
tonight.
Coleman.
Do you have virtual?
So Daphne, unmute yourself. You're still muted. Right, Shkoya. Right, off you go.
Okay, hello everybody.
Hello.
Wonderful memories. I met Philly in 1963 and I was a student and joined the London Jewish Mayor Choir, and I used to go and eat with Philly and Blossom, and Philly used to sing to me the Chazanut line. He had no music, no printed music, and I used to just jot down the notes as he sang them. And then having jotted down the notes on a piece of manuscript paper, then I used to improvise the accompaniment. And that's how I learned how to accompany Chazonim all those years ago.
So is that Pinchik accompaniment yours then, that we just heard?
Well, I don't think so, but you know, as the time went on, obviously we have printed music, but initially that's all I started with.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
Because he always used to say to us choir boys that there's only one accompanist he wants, and that is Daphne Lewis. And it could be 200 miles away in Manchester, and you would be in London. No difference.
Thank you.
It was really great to see you looking so young and hale and hearty.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Lovely, lovely memories. Thanks so much.
Who's next? Jeanette,
David,
hello.
hi. I just wanted to say what a wonderful presentation it was, really. It just brought back so many memories, and it's just beautifully put together, pieces that I haven't heard for a really long time, actually. So I just wanted to say that, really. Thank you for putting all that together and all that kind of information. And I know people have said that.
Well, your dad was a unique talent. I mean, there are very few people who had his musical skills. I remember being in the choir there at Pesach. He would sing Rosenblatt's Tal, and the second line was this very, very difficult coloratura. He would just give it out. Amazing. And sometimes it was time at the end of the service, he would sing Rosenblatt's Omar Rabbi Elazar. Which Chazan sings Omar Rabbi Elazar in Shul? Nobody. Almost impossible to sing, and the range required is so wide, and he was solid in the baritone range. And I remember him telling me when I visited him in Netanya one time, here's this opera record. He said it had a top C in it, so I had to sing it. And such a casual talent, brilliant. It was really a pleasure, and I'm very glad to see that Yehuda Marks, who suggested this evening, has managed to join. Chazan Marks has been obliged to attend a shiva tonight in Manchester, and he's made it into the Zoom in good time now to say a few words to us. So can you unmute yourself, Yehuda?
Hi, hello. Hello, David. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi,
We
I
have a
only heard the
picture of
last
you.
comment, Ray. I only heard Coleman Ray.
Right. That was
No,
your idea
lovely.
to have the Copperman evening.
Right, was it? Yeah, it's a beautiful voice, excellent vocal technique. He sings effortless, you know, it's so natural. He's a beautiful, fantastic voice.
Yeah, and he knew the Nusach for Pesach Sheni. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah,
There was nobody like him.
nobody like him. His voice production is perfect. You can't fault his voice. You know, it's a very brilliant vocal technique.
I remember thinking if he would take 3 hours to do Yom Kippur Musaf, starting at 1 o'clock in South Manchester, finishing at 4 o'clock, it was a work of art to perceive that every item he had in his mind in place in advance. And he was a real Litvak. There was no wild extemporization. He knew what he was doing. If that's what the music says, that's what I sing. And he was reliable from that point of view as a musician. And not everybody was.
You can't get that today, can you? You can never.
Very, very rare.
It's you know, you're not bored at all listening to him singing on a Shabbat or on a Yom Tov. The services just went so quickly. Nobody started looking at their watches and thinking, I'm bored, you know, what time is it? What time are we going to finish? It just flowed effortlessly and went through the service. And it was so, when you came away from it, you were elated, you were joyful. You know, it wasn't, oh, the chazan went on for a long time and he did this and
No,
did
he was
this
very
and
well.
dragged that.
Actually,
There was no such
in,
thing.
in South Manchester, when Manchester United were playing at home on a Saturday, then the service had to be finished at 12 o'clock because the people were at Old Trafford at 3 o'clock. And
He
it
did
was.
that in Glasgow. He did that in
two
Newton Mearns.
Kedusha and Ritzay, and that was it. Or another day it would be Kedusha and Birchas Kohanim or something like that. And it was a well-organized,
Yeah,
beautiful
brilliant.
experience. And also I would say that we've got one of the choristers from London online. I was a chorister in the Manchester Jewish Male Voice Choir when he took over from Zoe Young at the end of the 1960s. And conducting a large male choir like that, he was also brilliant. So sermonizer, Lena, Cantor extraordinaire, opera singer, Baal Nusach. He had the whole package. So who else wants to raise their hand?
Anyone else? No.
David, I've got a few things that my father actually wrote when he was leaving Glasgow.
Right.
He actually wrote in his own words. He didn't give a last sermon. Instead, he talked about his life. And I've got some of it. I haven't got all of it, but I've got some of it.
Fire away.
And this is about attending lessons at Jews College. Although I was nearly 20, I looked like a kid of 15 or 16. When I attended my first Chazonisha class at college, I took a seat at the back of the room. The name of the teacher was Pinkasovich. During the course of the lesson, he got extremely agitated. In a very foreign tongue, he kept saying, Batman Copperman. He was supposed to come to the class today. Where is he? Because he has a big position, Duke's Place, he thinks he doesn't need my tuition. Towards the end of the lesson, he told one of the students to sing something completely out of his range. I must have grimaced, and he said, you little boy over there, do you think you could do any better? I could try, I replied. My Irish accent was much stronger then, so most of the students realised who I was. I got up and went to the front of the class. Pinkasovich then fished out the hardest piece he could find and handed it to me. He didn't know that I could read music fluently. When I'd finished, he looked down on me and I looked up at him, being so incensed he wasn't thinking straight. And who are you, he demanded, to which I replied, Batman Copperman. That's one of my dad's stories. He wrote quite a few funny kind of stories, really, about his life. And also, as he said about Nusach, how important Nusach was to him and opera. So,
yeah, I remember him telling me that he didn't enjoy the phase of Jews College so much, and I think that would be why he sought out Chazan Tauber as a Nusach teacher, because the two were kindred spirits, both brilliant sight readers, brilliant vocalists, Talmudicians. They were kindred spirits. They presumably thought the same, and so they got on well. Have we got any chance of speaking to? Is Yitzhak Copperman still there, or any of the neighbours from Chorlton? I saw George Alexander was on and Frankie was on.
my mother's sister is here as well. I just wanted to welcome Auntie Stella Friedman, who's my mother's sister.
Hello, welcome. Very, very nice to see you.
Right.
So,
anyone else? No.
Does anybody want to say something? George, you're raising your hand? You're not raising your hand. Frankie, are you raising your hand? No, you're not raising your hand. And what about some of the Copperman? What about Emmanuel Bernstein? You must be a cousin's son. So, yes, hello.
Hello, everyone. So I'm the son of Rabbi Isaac Bernstein, who actually some of you would have known. And Uncle Philly was he was just this entity in the family. I mean, my father was a big Maven in Chazonis, and Uncle Yuki, that's Yehuda Copperman, he was in awe of Uncle Philly's voice, as was Auntie Tzippi. If any of you knew Tzippi Copperman, she herself was a musical talent.
Who was Tzippi? Tzippi was married to who?
Tzippi was Yuki's wife.
Yuki's wife, right?
And she had a I think it was a contralto voice, and she was with the Chicago choir, the Jerusalem choir as well.
And where do you live nowadays, Emmanuel?
In Jerusalem, in Beit Dagan.
Oh,
So,
Erev Tov. So it's
yeah.
late for you. So I hope it's not too late for you. But
It was
this
not
is
too late
unique-
for this. It was
this is a-
just the only thing I would say on a personal level before just one reminiscence. What really struck me over the last few moments, and also special hello to Jeanette, who much love to Jeanette. Yeah. I think one can really very clearly hear Uncle Philly's, as he's singing, his love for the music, and not just his attention that he's singing it in such a wonderful way. One that he really, you can hear his sense his devotion to what it is that he's singing. That really, for me, just listening, that comes through. But just I met Uncle Philly once, and Auntie Tippy, that's again Yuki's wife. She said to me, he doesn't often sing when he's in family events. If you can ever prevail upon him to sing, do it. Do whatever you can. And I tried. It didn't work. he was just
If any of these recordings, please be in touch afterwards. I'll send you the recordings. Because as Spencer said in the original introduction, it's very difficult to locate his recordings and also to understand his role models in Chazonis. He used to say to us, when it became easily possible to buy Reutemann records, David Reutemann, he said, what a vocalist, what technique, fantastic. And his favorite piece of Reutemann was Misha Osonissim. And then I met him one time, and it was after a Price concert. I said to him, you auditioned to succeed Moshe Price in Manchester, but you didn't fancy the shidduch with the president's daughter, so you went to Leeds. He said he was outstanding. And again, there are hardly any recordings in a studio of Chazan Price, who was the Chazan in Budapest before the war, a Polish boy who came also aged 19 to the Central Synagogue, that in that case of Budapest, Kaczynski Street, where Dayan Steif was the rabbinical figure in charge, who said that this bocher has got to be married if he's going to daven for the Yom Noraim. And so Dayan Steif saved Moshe Price from the eventual Gabai's daughter in Manchester, because he was already married by the time he got to Manchester. And he was full of admiration for these people, these terrific vocal techniques. And to him, music seemed easy. So to us, who were his choir boys, he was very patient with trying to get us to sing the right things, and I appreciate that forever. Who else wants to say something?
Oh, I think we've been going on for quite some time
Yeah,
now.
okay. I see Beryl and Stanley Brickman. Maybe Chazan Brickman.
Oh, right, a final
say
word.
something. Then. Can you unmute yourself, Stanley? No, you can't. Stanley, can you unmute yourself? You're raising your hand. Any chance of you unmuting yourself? You're getting some help. Square.
Oh,
right.
Go ahead.
That's why I got married.
Sorry?
That's why I got married. A wife to help me.
Oh, very good.
Isaac and Hector, as they say in the classics. What a heartbreaking presentation. To think what has happened. They have. I can't find words to say this generation that youngsters are being brought up to. What they have missed. These generations were golden years of Chazonim. Unfortunately, we don't see it today. In a place, when I became chairman of the Chazonim Association in '57, and before I went to Sheffield, which was in 1960, we had about 60 Chazonim up and down the country. And today, perhaps if there are six congregants, 6 Chazonim today that are left, it's a calamity. It's a calamity.
Did you ever hear Chazan Copperman singing?
I I heard Chazan Copperman when I was in South Africa, coming back to Somerset West, I think, on the way back. He said, I said, Philly, I'm here. He said, come round. Blossom and my wife Beryl will get together and we'll sing. We just sang a little bit, but he said, I've never been happier. I said, why? He says, here, ich bin de Chazan, ich bin de Rav, ich bin de Shamus, ich bin de Gabba, ich bin the minion man, the headmaster, all 10 to make a minion. He says, and I've never been happy. I've got no source from everyone. A half a mile away is the desert. And that's the last that I knew of today.
Right. Lovely.
Philip
Thank you
Copperman.
very much.
I was
Thank
afraid
you.
I was afraid that I missed him. I didn't see him. We have a place as well in Netanya, but we never came in contact with him at that time towards the end.
So I can see a Moshe Copperman and a Gideon Copperman. So would you like to? Erev Tov, Rabotai. So what's even?
Hi. We speak English. We speak English too. I'm Yitz's son, and it was a great opportunity for me to get to know better my uncle Philly. Unfortunately, I didn't get to know much when he was still alive because he was living abroad most of the years, and only when he was quite much older he came here to Israel. And also to Netanya. I live in Yerushalayim, so it was a little bit more difficult to get to know him every day. But for me, it was a great opportunity. And hi, Janet. It was a great opportunity for me to get to know his music and his talent. So thank you very, very much for this evening because it was really very special for us.
Naim Meod, thank you. It was great to meet you. And Moshe, where are you?
I'm here.
Where do you live?
In Beit Shemesh.
So are you the son of Menachem?
No, I'm the son of Shalom. I'm Gideon's nephew. I know Rabbi Menachem, of course. And I never knew Uncle Philip, but he had such a great voice. I never heard it before. And I'm a Chazan myself, and I really enjoyed it.
I have to say that he's got some
Toda
of the
rabba.
talent.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, I was right that all the memories came flooding back tonight, and we're most grateful to all your family, friends, and everyone else. And I'd like to thank David for his well-researched talk about Reverend Philip Copperman. I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from you if you have recordings of him, which is not included tonight. And if you have any memories of Reverend Copperman, please feel free to add your comments when we shortly place tonight's recording on the Edgware United Synagogue YouTube channel. You can also find all our other previous Cantor recordings, all under a single Cantoral classification on the Edgware United YouTube channel. Thank you for attending tonight.